It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, our tale begins with poo. Kind of. But no, really. Um, yeah. It begins with, unsolicited advice on taking a shit. I'm not kidding. That's where we begin our story this week. And it was the what quality of about the exchange that caused me to stick a pin in it and go, something's here. Something of note is going on. Also, it's just funny to start things off talking about poo, right? If you like my approach to these topics, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. All right, so I love hot sauce. And so I went to this new burrito place and I got my, mixed bean burrito, and then they had like the spicy salsa because why bother with mild, and then the jalapenos, and then they had it was based on the way based on the burn pattern and the heat pattern, you're supposed to say, but certain peppers like have this delay, so it'll start here and then you'll feel the heat coming back up. Others just slide down, right? And I find that Carolina Reaper peppers and ghost peppers do the down. Scotch bonnet the same way, but stuff like scorpion peppers or dragon peppers, which I just had recently, they're very tasty, but they tend to come back up, right? I don't know why. It just is. But so I'm guessing it was sort of a Scotch bonnet, maybe some Scotch bonnet, but definitely like a ghost pepper, Carolina Reaper based on the pattern and the heat. But it was spicy, right? It wasn't the cheap fast food ghost pepper. It's the idea. It's not actually the experience of eating a ghost pepper hot sauce. It was proper. So I posted about it on Twitter. Why do I say that? Tweeted. There. Simpler language. But it was, I love it when the staff at a restaurant watches me to make sure I'm not going to die from the spice. And I got a bunch of comments about, because I was like, so good. And I got a bunch of comments going, oh, you'll be sorry later. You'll be sorry when it comes back out. It's like, why are people talking as if I've never eaten really spicy hot sauce before and I'm not familiar with the concept of fire in, fire out? Are we really doing the condescending explanation thing on taking a shit? Hence, we begin with poo. And I put this up, and most people sort of got what I was doing here. Like really, really? Okay, but this one guy who is something of a troll, but just because he's a troll doesn't mean he doesn't have a point sometimes, which is why I don't block him. Said something about, don't know what you're complaining about. This is just how men talk to each other. I took him at his word. Okay, this is how men talk to each other. Probably right. I mean, why would he say this? But if you drill down on that means that men are, regularly treating people in ways that they don't want to be treated and don't cut it out when someone's clearly not having fun. And I don't think that was what the guy meant to say, but I think he's on to something despite that. And hence we're talking about, men and friendships. Because when I thought about it, yeah, I do see a lot of that when I talk to, I have a lot more male friends than I do female friends, a lot more guy friends. And I do see that when I say, well, if you don't like it, why not tell them you don't like it? I do find that the women tend to be, I don't want to be a bother. Whereas I find men go, and these are generalizations, obviously, but I find men kind of go, it's okay. They're just joking around. And I said, but you don't like it. They're your friends. And they just sort of dissociate. And there is that thing of, okay, they're friends, but they're clearly not actually close in terms of that sort of friendship where you can actually say something's bothering you and the other person will cut it out. And this is not something inherent to men. This is not innate. I have plenty of male friends who part of the reason I consider them friends instead of just acquaintances is because I can tell them I don't like that and they stop. They may ask why I don't like something, but they stop. They make an effort. And I looked into what might be going on here because obviously if you've got social groups, if you've got friend groups that you can't be honest with, you're not getting all the benefits of high quality friendships, right? And my attitude, now I am an introvert and I prefer a smaller number of more meaningful relationships to just, knowing hundreds of people. That's exhausting. But, my attitude is if you can't be honest with somebody, you're not really friends. That's an acquaintance or a relationship of convenience. That's not really a friend. But there's another term for it, and it's actually structural. It's really interesting. And this is not my opinion here. This is actually the research I looked up. That women are socially encouraged, in my case forced, to actually invest in just friendships, right? Cultivating relationships for the sake of cultivating relationships. Whereas men are socially encouraged to be more achievement oriented, and friendships end up being byproducts of activities, hobbies, groups you belong to, work. It's actually called opportunistic socializing. That's the official term for it, opportunistic socializing. And I'm very achievement oriented. I'm very results oriented. And I do think it was actually beneficial to me to recognize that it is, basically be told you got to do better at, engaging with people, and that it's not wasting time to see friends just for the sake of seeing friends, not to accomplish some common goal. And if men aren't being encouraged to do that, and you buy into this thing that certain inherent traits are nature, not nurture, well, it really explains why the loneliness epidemic is hammering men way more than it is women. The social corrections, as one person put it in a previous comment, are not balancing things out. They're actually taking, innate traits that aren't bad. I mean, like I said, I'm wired that way too. They aren't bad. It's just life needs balance. And instead of balancing out that inherent instinct, it's knocking you further off balance. And friendships are like platonic friendships, close friendships are really, really important. They balance out other parts of your life. They balance out your relationship with family. They balance out relationships. I think you have a better chance of successfully maintaining a long-term relationship if you have friends that, you can trust to seek out advice and support from, right? Especially when things get rough and you end up in caregiver positions. And if you just have friends via opportunistic socializing, you don't have that. And my rule of thumb is if you can't be honest with someone, not cruel, right? But honest, you're not really friends. So that doesn't mean you point out everything you think is wrong with the person, because that's not honesty. That's messed up. That's not being a good friend either. But if somebody directly asks you a question, if you feel the need to lie, something's going on there. And I do notice it happens far more often in men than in women, that when you say, well, if it bothers you, why don't you tell them? You know, the answers from women, you'll hear something like, well, I don't want to be a bother, or I don't want to cause problems. Whereas men, it's this interesting sort of, and they just sort of dissociate. And there's something going on here that's very real. And this is why I listened to the troll when he was literally griefing me about responses to taking a shit. There's something very profound in poop condescension, right? Because yes, there are gendered ways of speaking, and a lot of it is performative, right? And what I notice with things like that is it's not, the comment is, guys talk to each other like this all the time, as opposed to this actually forms bonds between guys. Because based on the science, it actually doesn't. These are markers of that opportunistic socializing, right? It's something you say to guys that you like play hockey with. I'm Canadian. That's what I went for. It's stuff you say to guys you play hockey with instead of people that you actually have meaningful relationships with. I don't know if you've ever had kind of a core group of friends that, like I said, I have a lot more male friends than female friends. I'm often the only female presenting person in the group. And I'm fine. I'm fine with that. Like in some ways I like that. I like that time. But there's the one guy who doesn't evolve into the closer, no, we're going to talk about real adulting with feelings now. And that dude just wants to constantly do that superficial ball busting that, yeah, we all do. But you hit a point where you know when to drop it because somebody actually needs to talk real talk. And I do think there's a correlation. Now, I can't prove this, which is why I'm speculating. I do think there's a correlation between a sense of self and, that constructed element of masculinity and how comfortable and confident a guy is in it, and creating that closer group of friends where it's like, yeah, ball busting's fun, but, it doesn't come at the expense of actually showing legitimate caring. I mean, I had a couple, I trying to get in FaceTime with friends or Zoom time. I try to do Zoom time weekly now, but I'm trying to get lunches in before the weather gets very Canadian. And there were some friends who, joking around and stuff like that, that's what they needed. They just needed to lighten it. But others really did need to talk. And, it's really important to have friends. And there was some coaxing involved, right? I needed to say to a few people, it's okay to feel bad. And one of the things I've learned the hard way is, when a guy has a breakup, never, ever, ever, ever trash the ex, because there's a high probability they might get back together, and you can never take back. You could say you didn't like a behavior, right? That this was wrong or that was wrong. But never trash the ex as a person, because at least the guys I know, they are loyal to a fault, and that will cause real problems. But see, that's something that's a maintenance thing that actually does feed a very good quality about someone, right? You want people around who are loyal. You want people around who connect to people on those deep levels. And it is uniquely difficult for guys to navigate feeling hurt and feeling betrayed and feeling rejected. The structures are so much more confusing than with women. I find myself so often with women saying things I know help them, but it would not make me feel better. I've learned that this is what they want to say, but I've had conversations with guys where it's like, what do you need? What's going to help you feel better here? Because I understand that the platitudes don't necessarily work. It's that old school thing, right? Where anything that remotely feels like weakness or pity just makes a guy feel worse instead of better. And I understand that because that's what goes on with me. Like, I know the correct thing to do is to say, I'm sorry that happened to you, or I'm sorry you had to go through that. That actually doesn't work with me, because why are you sorry? You didn't do it. I'd rather somebody just go, well, that was a shitty thing that happened. you know um and that's where the honesty comes in, right? Especially if something is actually a result of something somebody actually fucked up, right? This was another comment I got on Twitter that I thought was really interesting. One thing a guy said that he can't stand in groups of men, and this happens, somebody else chimed in and said women do that too, and I can't stand it either. But he said that when a guy is trying to own his mistakes and the guys around him are like, oh, fuck her, you can do better, all that stuff, it really, it pisses them off, because the guy is trying to own his mistakes. And yeah, when somebody's trying to own a mistake, you validate their perspective. You say, all right, what I say is okay, so you learn from that. You'll get it next time. Important but difficult life experience, but it's great that you're being accountable. I tend to say, just try not to be too hard on yourself. I had one of those. I had two of those conversations last week. And if you don't have that social circle where, there is honor and honesty. I know I ripped the Band-Aid off of honor, but it seemed to really resonate with people last week on Feedback Friday. If you don't have that sort of honor circle, it's very, very hard to learn from mistakes, because, guys do have that added pressure to be a particular kind of strong. and not show weakness. And in some ways, admitting a mistake is showing weakness. And you hope your friends are going to be there for you, supporting you in that. And when they're dismissing it, they're saying, no, you didn't do anything. It's an attempt at being supportive, but it's really not being supportive because you're not allowing, you're not allowing, as I say, people to be the hero of their own story. And I do think it's essential that if somebody really is your friend, you can tell them, look, I really don't like that. Can you not do that? I really appreciate it when people tell me, I don't like this, I don't like that. I know a few people who, they'll get a certain facial expression and I know, oh, shouldn't have said that. Okay, and immediately go, oh, okay, sorry, what did I do there? And they'll tell me, I'm like, okay, I'll watch that going forward, That's to me incredibly important because people need to feel, first of all, truly supported, but we all sort of understand that cognitively, right? When it comes to guys, and it's this reductive group generalities thing, but I do think there's a truism there. Two women talking tomorrow, and next week it's a two-parter because we went on song and I went on for so long, but we talk about the whole hot mess phenomenon with women and how there isn't really a male equivalent. Guys don't sort of have the state of hot mess dumb. It's just, I don't know. It's a very feminized trope. And so I think, and I did read some articles that back this up, that unintentionally male spaces, groups of men, encourage men to, stuff down feelings, don't talk about it, just carry it around until you break, right? And part of the way they do that is there's those, unintentional judgments, or in some cases intentional judgments. All you need is one asshole to spoil a social group, and it is sort of a delicate balance of your buddy knowing you'll tell them when you think they fucked up, because that tends to be very important in establishing trust. And there's a unique way that guys do that, but you need to know someone will tell you when they think you're wrong, preferably gently, but you need to know that's there, so that when they tell you you're doing something right, you can believe them. And I'd said to somebody in a conversation a couple weeks ago, when I was, going through certain things and just saying, well, here's the data on this. The guy said, you're not helping. I said, look, I'm telling you the truth here. So when I tell you there's nothing to worry about, you can believe me. And he kind of went, all right, right? It's like, yeah, here's the worst that could happen. Is that really so bad? Right? As opposed to, oh, don't worry about it, which no one believes ever. They're already worrying about it. Don't tell them not to worry about it. You say that, you risk making somebody clam up because they feel like they're being, their concerns are being dismissed. And one of the things I find that there's a different, it's fine with men and women. It's that stereotype of, she says it's fine, but it's not fine. But when it's not fine in that way. But I find with guys, the it's not really fine, but they're saying it's fine is more subtle. And sometimes you do have to sort of prompt the, you know, it it's okay to not be fine, because people in general tend to avoid conflict, and they're afraid that not being fine might lead to conflict, especially people who have just been sort of rejected or ghosted in the past. And obviously the healthy conflict, unhealthy conflict, it's about how you handle it, right? But just simply being not fine for a lot of people has been, you know, it has been presented to them as a catalyst for conflict, and it really shouldn't be. But for a lot of people, it very much is. If you have a person, you know, especially in families, that always turned around when anybody else is having a bad day. So, I can't take this. I can't take you. It can make people very, very hesitant to open up. And these sorts of skills, first of all, trust is earned, but also this sort of stuff is practiced as well. And it can be kind of, you know, um, iterations. It happens in stages that somebody may not want to talk right away, but because you were willing to listen, they may seek you out to talk later. And that's very, very important to have that, with friends, because your, your spouse, your partner, they cannot be your everything that way. It's just, how do I put this? There are times in any, committed relationship where you're having a bad time and they're having a bad time. And as much on paper, it's, oh, we're here for each other always, right? There are just some things that, because you're going through it together, you cannot be the support system for the other person. You both need support because it's a very difficult time for both of you. And that's when you need an extended support system with friends that you can go and lean on them, because they're not, they're not under the same economic pressures, they're not under the same whatever's going on, the kids are driving you both crazy, that kind of thing. They're removed from it, and so you can have that discussion. And that's where the like emulated unintentional shutdowns of conversations with too much kind of performative masculine griefing can really shut somebody up without realizing it. And again, I'm going to be clear, because every time I try to talk about this, somebody hijacks it. Because this is a really sensitive point. And I'm going to try to speculate based on why, but there's probably multiple reasons, right? People, I think, have felt like this is something that you just have to take to show you're tough. And that is true with acquaintances. That is true sometimes at work. That is true when there's a shared goal, that, opportunistic socializing. That's a real marker of opportunistic socializing. But among actual friends, there should be a point where it gets turned off. and people should really care, because it's not good-natured teasing if it actually bothers you, right? That just is common sense, but sometimes common sense is neither, right? That people have put up with eating shit for so long that they've disconnected from it actually bothering them. And sometimes they don't want to say anything because they don't know why it bothers them, and they don't want to take it out on the wrong person. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 conversations with people over the last week or so. It's been a really intense period where they've started yelling about the situation. I knew they weren't yelling at me, right? They were just yelling at the situation, and then they said, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's fine. Like, it needed to get out. I know that wasn't directed at me. It's okay. And, they can trust that, because I'll tell them if it's not okay. You may notice, I am very, very big on, no, you talk to people with respect. And part of that is, and again, I think this is emulated behavior. We all have had to navigate those trash talk spaces where you go along with it because that seems to be the culture, and you don't want to seem, it's all these social enforcements of, you don't want to seem like the wuss or the weakling or a bunch of other words that guys use to check each other, because they think they're acting like alphas, but what they really are is being a bunch of betas, because the beta is the aggressive, demonstrative one. The alpha, please tune in tomorrow if you want to hear more about this, is the one who, is the protector, the guardian, the one who protects the unit. And you don't protect the unit by exacerbating intra-unit conflict, right? You don't want to make people fight with each other. And a lot of people do that stuff because most people are very conflict averse. I don't like conflict, but I can deal with it. And that's made it really difficult for me to understand that some people, because they are so terrified of conflict, they actually escalate it, because they're so panicked that even if they know the de-escalation tools, they don't engage with them at the time. And so I have to check myself sometimes. But because of that, because I own that element of my personality, and it was hard earned, right? I'm not going to, if it's on Twitter and it's just an asshole, whatever, I'll be aggressive as all fuck. But I'm not going to grief someone until we've sort of established enough trust that I know it's not going to bother them. I have friends that we've been through enough that we can talk shit and it's fine. But too many people nowadays I see trying to emulate that because they think it's what people are supposed to be. And instead of being, they don't realize that it's a symptom of a really trusting relationship to be able to do it. They try to do it right off the bat. And that can actually get in the way of forming those bonds that means nobody's getting upset. Because if you skip that step, everybody's feeling defensive and everybody's feeling on guard, so no one can be completely honest and nobody can say, hey guys, not today. Okay, and that's very, very important. Part of the shame stuff is identity and that sense of self. And going back to where I began, that guy on Twitter who's like, guys talk to each other like this all the time. And like I said, I take him at his word. But what that means is that guys are condescending to each other all the time. And I actually think that's probably more true than the trolley guy on Twitter meant for it to be. And I made this video in part just to like drop out why that can be an issue, but there are better ways. There are better ways, and that's not, you know, the fact that the guy was griefing me about taking a shit just shows that he's hardly a paragon of effective socialization, and that's why it was so profound for me. Yes, it was very profound poop condescension. And this is when people will get into, it wasn't condescension, I want to see evidence. Like, no, guys. That's how you're shutting down your buddies, right? When you're like, no, it was absolutely not your fault, when they're trying to take ownership, you're shutting down your buddy. When they see you going at people, show me proof, you're shutting down your buddy. You are. You don't know you are, because you're giving people reasons to not open up to you, to let you know that you're doing that. And, you know, we live in an age where, like I said, people are very conflict averse, and ghosting is sort of socially acceptable, and too many relationships just fade into non-existence because people won't engage in healthy conflict. People won't engage in healthy risk. There is no honor anymore. And it's because everything is facade. And I'm going to talk on Wednesday about how this leads to something I call ransoming identity. But I wanted to stick a pin in this specifically with Manly Monday, because there are different shades of this stuff with men groups and women groups, right? Right. No value judgment, is just so. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron if you like this sort of content. Patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Cares session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, so people can talk out some of these issues. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.